Welcome back to another episode of Everything is Public Health. I'm one of the co-hosts, Big Murray. We have the Honorable Dr. Linda Ray Murray, and you know nothing can be done without our main man behind the scenes, Intellectual Dre, our super producer. Today we're going to talk about the pandemic and how it affects students. We have two wonderful guests, Alma and Elise. Alma, please introduce yourself to everybody.
Hey there, my name is Amna. I'm currently a mental health counselor at Amita Health, and I'm at UIC for applied psychology.
All right, Elise, your turn.
Hello, everyone. My name is Elise. I am currently a 1L law student at UC Irvine in California.
Excellent. Law school, that's big. Counselor, that's deep. Doc Murray, kick it off. Talk to us. You're a professor. Talk to us and set the tone for tonight of what you think it's like. And then we'll bring our guests in as well.
Well, you know, this is such an interesting and important topic. And so I think that one of the challenges during the pandemic is to really look at the problems we normally face without a pandemic, or at least the coronavirus pandemic, and how coronavirus has changed it by creating more problems and difficulties as well as more opportunities. So I will say something from the point of view for faculty members, if I might, that depending on where you go to school, obviously all faculty members are different and each school has its own atmosphere, but there tends to be too often, in my opinion, among my faculty colleagues, a notion that their goal is to serve as a guardian or a barrier for students to make it, either to graduate or to become a physician or a lawyer or a psychologist. And that notion that they're somehow guarding an area, I find personally disturbing, as opposed to we're trying to make sure that students that we accept in programs can in fact succeed and graduate. So I think that has a lot to do with what stress students feel. When the pandemic first started and everybody had to switch to remote, I think people who teach, whether they're teaching in the third grade or high school or college or professional schools, most of us had to do a sudden switch to remote learning, which most faculty in the country don't really do. And so there was a little bit of humanity. And certainly for the first few months and semesters or so, faculty tried to be understanding. But I've noticed this year, as we entered in the fall and certainly now in the spring, whether people are back in class or functioning remotely, that the faculty have not understood that we are still in a pandemic and that the pandemic situation puts a real burden on kids that aren't rich, for example. If people have to work while they go to school, which many of our students do, certainly students of color, it's marginalized students for whatever reason. And we have not really moved to decrease that burden. So while the press has spent a lot of time talking about the impact on our young children, I think it's very important to ask ourselves, what impact does this have on our adult students in college and professional schools, graduate school, and what impact that may have in the future? So let me just start there. And one last thing before we go to the students, I will say this. For example, I think it's a shame at the University of Illinois, for example, a public institution, that about half of our undergraduate students are food insecure. This is not unusual for state schools, for public schools, public colleges. But since the pandemic, the lines at our food pantry really have tripled. When I come through the student union on the days that the food pantry is open, I find that very distressing, and that still exists today. So all of our resources as college institutions has been put under stress. How many computers people have. I have students that were trying to do their schoolwork on their phones that didn't have in classes. How much pressure there is just on ordinary life, paying rent and that kind of activity. But I'm curious as to what our guests think have been the major problems that they and their classmates have faced in the past couple of years. So let's start with you, Elise, because you actually were in the process of applying to law school during the pandemic and then starting law school this fall.
Right. Yeah, I was I graduated from UIC in May of 2020, and then between that summer to fall period is when I was doing like studying for my LSAT and doing all my applications and stuff. It was definitely a very interesting time considering like I mean, everything kind of started going downhill in March, but we were still very like flip floppy about like when are things going to go back to normal, and things just kept getting worse. So having to study and take a really grueling exam during like the whole time that they're kind of everything is changing to online, but they weren't fully prepared for everything to change online, and things just like kind of being uncertain was a really it was really difficult, and it was really interesting to kind of just like be going through the process like live, like as it was happening in my application process. So yeah, that was interesting. Um, and then I guess I started school this fall, or yeah, this last fall, 2021, and still having school kind of being bounced back between online and in person has also been interesting. It started off in person, but with a lot of protocols. Currently, we are online until the end of January so that they can kind of monitor what the virus is doing right now. And when the end of January comes around, we'll see what they decide. They could extend it, or we could be going back into person. So everything kind of just up in the air, and we literally just learn something new every day about how our education experience is going to move forward.
So, Elise, what was it like not being able to walk across the stage for graduation? Did you feel disappointed? Were your parents and friends, did they want to see you? Explain that experience.
Yeah, it was such an interesting experience because going through, the 4 years of college, and college is definitely not an easy thing. So, you're working for 4 years towards this one specific goal, and by the end of it, you're ready to be done, but your one last thing you want to do is just walk across that stage. And then when they were telling us all to go home, as the pandemic was picking up, and they were like, everyone just go home, we're going to do things online. We all still had it in our head, oh, we're just going to finish classes online, but like, once graduation comes around, everything will be fine. And when they told us, they're moving graduation online, they're going to do like some Zoom graduation, a lot of us were very upset by that situation. I was more so I was mad that I wasn't going to be able to walk, and eventually I was just tired of the whole thing. It kind of ruined the whole graduation process for me and a lot of my friends, because it was just like, we worked so hard for all of this, and everything is getting kind of relegated to some half, you know, halfly made Zoom thing. They tried their best though. I mean, no one could predict what was going to happen, but it definitely wasn't what we wanted it to be. So it was upsetting, but you got to move on eventually, which we did, and it's all good now. So
All right. So Armin, what year are you at UIC?
I'm a junior right now.
So when your freshman year, you got to help me. My memory sometime with my age. You came in as a freshman during the pandemic, or were you already in your freshman year?
My situation
You're
was kind of
breaking up a little bit.
unique. I have an associate's degree in. Oh, I'm sorry. My situation was kind of unique. I'm supposed to be a sophomore, but I did my associates in a year, so I have junior status. But I graduated high school when the pandemic started, so I missed out on my high school graduation during that time.
So what was that like being in high school, preparing for college and preparing for life? Did you think, what did you think as a high school student, your senior year, missing out on graduations, proms, and just seeing your friends, that 4 year journey, and it being over and not being able to celebrate with them? What was that like? I think we're having some technical.
Honestly.
We lost it. We lost it. That's sad. At least we about to pick on you now. How do you feel taking classes, being in law school, which is, like a very important degree, and taking classes online? What is that like? Like, do you
Oh
feel
my God. It is a different experience. I will say that. I think I was lucky that the first semester at least got to be in person. So, starting law school, we at least got to have that in-person experience. Currently, right now, having classes online is a very difficult thing for me, particularly just because of the way that I learn and my ability to focus on things. If I'm not in a classroom setting, it becomes very, very, very hard for me to stare at a screen for a long duration of time, trying to absorb, the heavy material that you learn in law school. So, online classes have been very hard. I will say that. I don't know how the people before me were doing their entire semesters online, so I commend them for that because it is hard for me.
so this is for Dr. Marianne, at least. As a professor and a student, do you all feel that there's a connection between professor and student online and in this hybrid thing, or do you feel there's a disconnection?
Go ahead.
Sorry. Go ahead, Elise.
Yeah, real quick. I think there's a little bit of both. I think that both the students and the professors both have to learn and integrate new ways in how to teach the material, and then the students have to be able to learn the material. I think it's hard on both sides. So I think that's where the connection is that both sides, have to struggle a bit to find out what works. And then I guess the disconnect would be that I think the students are just the ones who, at the end of the day, do end up with the short end of the stick if they happen to have a professor that's just not able to really curate their material for online learning. But hopefully that's not every professor, and I don't think it's every professor. At least all of mine have tried their hardest and are trying their hardest to make everything accessible and easy to learn in an online environment. So yeah, I think there's mostly a connection, but I'm sure there's a disconnect here and there.
Welcome back on you're having connection problems. We see we've just been talking about some of the problems of online classes versus in-person classes. And so that's what we're talking about. I'll let you, I won't ask you right this second, but I'll say, as I, last academic year, start from 2020, and then, we were online. And it depends on what kind of class, so if you're in a big giant lecture class, like say biochemistry at a place like the University of Illinois, which will have 150, 200 people in it, it probably doesn't make that much difference whether you're online or not, because you're not going to be able to ask a whole bunch of questions, etc. The class that I enjoy teaching the most are really seminar type classes, and that's a little difficult for me as a faculty member, because it's difficult on Zoom, especially since many students don't keep their video on. So it's hard to pick up from students when they're looking puzzled, or when they're bored, or when they're falling asleep, or you can't make an adjustment to what you're doing in the class because you don't have the important feedback from the students. So for a seminar class, which is a smaller grouping and depends on discussion, I think it's a little trickier. On the other hand, for students that can't be in person, we certainly have a lot of students that cannot be in person. And also, as you all know, online courses have grown over the years. Certainly, it's hard to have people in different cities, etc. In person. That's not possible. So there's some advantages and disadvantages to both. But as a general notion, I really prefer in person. I don't know what your experience has been, Amna.
Now, for me, online was a lot better because I was able to speed run my associate's degree and work at the same time. But for a lot of people, I know that it had a lot of like psychological effects. Like people were isolated at home, people couldn't concentrate at home, or, overall online didn't let you see your friends, and it caused a lot of like, social effects. Humans were not meant to like, be isolated for so long or not see people for so long. So I think that's like one of the huge disadvantages that we've had. Me personally, it was great. I love online learning because I work full time. So it's completely like, it's based on my time. I can do my assignments when, based on my work schedule. But I know for a lot of people, it's not like that.
So for either one of you all, what is testing like in terms of taking tests online? How is that conducted now?
Well, in my courses, we don't have tests. People have to hand in papers or reflection papers. So there's no actually in-class test that people have to do. There are a few take-home tests that people may have. I don't know what our guests think.
Yeah, I was gonna say like my finals, all of my finals were like online exams, but they were take-home exams, and they were I'm pretty sure all of them were open book or like limited open book. So I feel like that was an advantage of online learning, is that you get to have open note exams. But they were relatively, I wouldn't say they were very much different from if we were to take them in person, but I guess being able to be like by yourself without the pressures of like sometimes when you're in a classroom and like if someone finishes earlier and you're seeing people leave and you're trying to focus, I don't know, sometimes that can be a distraction. But for the most part, taking the tests online haven't been anything too crazy to me.
How can they limit open book if you're taking a test at home? Like how can they monitor that?
It's based off like the honor code. You have to just, you got to be a good person, you got to be a good student. When they say like limited open book, they mean like you're not supposed to be searching things like on the internet, but like you can use all your notes, you can use the books and any other like approved material. So you have a lot of material that you can use. So I feel like trying to use stuff that you're not supposed to is just kind of like, why waste your time when you have all the other stuff like right in front of you?
I mean, yeah, you must be a good student. I tell you, in my day, it wouldn't be limited.
Well, so there have been a lot of problems with this actually. In some places, not any of my classes, but there's some schools that have tried to have software that keep track of where your eyes are. Are you looking somewhere else? And a lot of these technological things that are designed to catch cheating don't really work, and they just create more anxiety. So I think that's a real problem. And what I think that you have to ask yourself is, if we're not talking about just memorizing, and anybody who thinks passing the course is just memorizing, I would argue is not a very good teacher, and it's not teaching anything worth learning, especially nowadays when everybody has a phone in their pocket, they can Google something. So to me, there really is no reason, in my opinion, at the college level, certainly to and above, to have something that's not a take-home test, because hopefully you're trying to assess people ability to reason, to think, to draw conclusions from what you've covered in class. And there's absolutely no reason that can't be done with a take-home test. And again, like I said, even when I was younger and my memory was better, the ability to look something up in 30 seconds on your phone should easily dissuade people from trying to teach folks to memorize things.
So, Alma, you mentioned that you work full time. How do you balance that, like in terms of your job and your hours around school?
I'm gonna be honest with you, sometimes I can't balance it. Like there are days where I will sleep through the whole day, just not go to class, but I'll catch up with assignments. It's hard. It's hard is what I'm gonna say. You have to you just have to manage your time.
Uh,
And
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
you do have to give up some sort of aspect in your life. So I really can't have a social life because I'm always either working or studying. Um, Something you have to give up. It's temporary, but it sucks.
Are both of you all held accountable if you miss class? Like, are your professors and law professors, regular professors, are they strict on attendance? And then the second part, do you have to show your face, or is a screenshot of yourself sufficient?
Oh no, they're pretty strict about attendance, but sometimes you're so tired that like you're just like whatever, it doesn't matter. As for video, yeah, they mandate videos, so I have to show my face no matter what.
What about you, Elise?
At my school, attendance is mandatory, and you kind of have like a sign-in thing that you do. But like, I mean, you can choose not to attend. The professor's not gonna like look for you in the Zoom or anything specifically like that. But it will, I guess, impact your grade in some way because attendance is a small part of your grade, but it's still like easy points. So you should probably go to class. And you don't have to have your camera on. The teachers like they might they would like you to, but it's not required. You don't have to. So yeah.
What are some of the things that your peers are saying in terms of complaining or in terms of frustration with online learning?
On my end, I think that some of my friends are like, it's kind of like half and half. Some of them, they really enjoy being able to be home, just learning from home, doing school from home. They get to hang out with their pets and like just like chill in their bed while in class. While other students, and this is also the side that I'm more so in, just have a hard time being able to focus in a home environment. And it's not always like I live further from my school, so it's not easy for me to just like always to just go and sit in like the library or something because it requires all the driving back and forth. So if I'm not there because all my classes are in person, it's kind of like I'm not gonna drive all the way over there. So yeah, other people are just like, oh, I wish classes were in person. This makes it harder for us, and other complaints like that. So it's kind of split in the middle. I can see both sides, but I would prefer in person just for the sake of my sanity and my grades.
So Doc Murray, and this is for everybody, how do you all feel about these new mandates coming out requiring college students to be vaccinated and have the booster shot, considering you're not even around people and you're not on campus? How do you all feel about that? And has it impacted you or anybody that you know of?
I believe it's great, honestly. Me personally, I was an immunizer for around a year. I encourage people to get vaccinated. If they don't get vaccinated, then to social distance. But I think it's good because we're going to go back in person no matter what. I know UIC is going back in person on Monday, and they're pushing for people to get their vaccines and boosters. So you're going to be around people in the future. So it's a good way to stay protected for you and others.
Doesn't UIC have a mandate out now that you must be vaccinated to come on campus?
It does have such a mandate. There are some exemptions, and you have to get tested if you're not. So, but let me just say, as a public health person, that yes, I support these mandates, and it's not just whether you're in class or not. First of all, most young people I know, people under 40, they're not staying. They may be doing class remote, but it's not like they're staying in the house particularly. So they're mixing around, and the first most important reason to get vaccinated and boosted is it decreases your chance of getting seriously ill and dying, which still is occurring. So let me just be clear about that. And the second reason, obviously, is to try to impact how quickly the virus spreads from person to person. I will say this, that I've noticed this, we're in a little bit of a Omicron surge now, which fortunately doesn't appear to be as severe as the earlier variants, but it is much, much more transmissible. And the number of people that I know that are very careful, especially public health people and medical nurses, I know so many people who have become positive since November. And
I bet they were all vaccinated too, right?
They were all vaccinated. The ones I know were all vaccinated and boosted, which is fortunate. But it's just an indication of how easily this is spread. When I was young, when I was a child, we didn't have a vaccine for measles. So everybody got all children got measles. There was no way you could grow up in the United States and not get infected with measles, which has its own problems. Now, of course, we have a vaccine for measles, so most people don't get it at all. But this particular variant is on the order of a measles transmissibility. It's very, very easy to transmit to another person. And also, we don't know what's going to happen in the next 2 or 3 or 4 months. We don't know. We do know there will be new variants, but we don't know what their character will be, how easily they'll be transmitted, and how dangerous they'll be. So I certainly urge all of you to get vaccinated and boosted, and to fight to make sure those options are available to everyone in the world. Because if we continue to allow countries that are poorer than ours to not have an adequate supply of vaccine, we're going to continue to generate variants that will spread around the world.
See, you trying to turn it into a public health little podium thing.
Everything is public health.
I'm trying to ask the question, maybe, and at least it would help me answer this, not from your personal, but from a semi-legal standpoint. If vaccinated people can still transmit the disease, why should we make it mandatory for students to be vaccinated then? That pressure alone of making it mandatory to be vaccinated and getting updated boosters, shouldn't there be some legal issues around that? So when the next variant comes out, are they going to tell students, now you got to have this booster? This virus, well, in terms of the vaccines, haven't really been scientifically proven. Every day we come out and hear something new. I'm not necessarily talking about personal, but has this come up in class in law school?
Yeah, I was about to say, I wish I had the proper legal background to give you a legal answer, but we have not gotten to that topic just yet. So I can only really give my general opinion, but I think the mandatory vaccine is because it is a public health issue. You're not just dealing with yourself individually, you're dealing with everyone that you may come in contact. This is a global issue. And I think having the mandatory vaccines and boosters and things like that is solely to make sure we do what we can do to keep things as together as possible, to keep things from getting crazier than we can handle. And so I think it's important that people do get vaccinated and get the booster. And if there's another shot that comes out that they say we have to get, just go and get the shot. Just because at the end of the day, I know it's difficult to, believe and understand, why things keep changing or they say new things here and there. But also, I think it's important for people to remember that the vaccine and stuff, it came quickly, but that's because, our society is advanced now. Years and years and years ago, of course, it would take a really, really long time to get things done because, technology, knowledge about viruses and things in general weren't as advanced as they are now. It's 2022. If a vaccine couldn't come out in 2 months or so, I would be questioning, what are people doing? Haven't we been learning how to do this stuff since hundreds of years ago? So to me, it makes sense that the vaccine and the boosters are coming out quicker than what we are used to seeing. It's because, they have the top minds in the whole world working on these things to make sure it doesn't get out of hand. So I think we should just do whatever is important to do. Do your best to, keep yourself safe and keep others safe. I know a lot of people they're tired. I know we're all tired, but we will continue to be tired until we get rid of this thing. So you might as well do what we have to do to get it to stop. So that is my general but slightly personal not legally substantiated opinion.
So I want to make sure that we don't mislead people here. So first, let me just say that this is a new virus and the variants are new. So there's lots of detailed information that takes time to figure out. But I want to be clear. It is true that with this particular variant, and that it's possible for people who are vaccinated to transmit it. No one ever said they couldn't transmit it. But how well you transmit it depends on a lot of things. For one thing, it depends on how sick you are.
Wait, how well? Can you define what you mean by how well?
Okay, so let's just think about how respiratory viruses are transmitted. If I'm sitting in, and obviously this depends partially on the variant. If I'm sitting right close to you, right next to you, not 12 feet apart, and I'm just breathing in and out with a variant like this one that's as easily transmitted as measles, it's true you might get infected just from me sitting next to you. That was less true with the Delta, for example. But if I cough, then I'm putting more virus particles out in the air, and therefore it's easier to get sick as opposed to if I don't cough. So to translate this. So if I'm fully vaccinated and boosted, if I get infected with this particular variant with Omicron and I'm asymptomatic and I happen to be in a class and I'm not shouting, I'm not singing, I'm not coughing, I'm not going to infect as many people as if I'm obviously sick and coughing and sneezing on people. So again, I want to be clear. It's not that the chances of passing it on is the same just because some people still shed virus. Don't forget, the virus, you don't pass the virus on the same every single day. There's some days where you have more virus in your upper respiratory system and you shed, we call it shedding, you expel it more in the air. So I think what people have to understand is this is, and I don't think it's difficult. I think everyone can understand this. There's a lot of moving parts to what makes you transmit a virus of any type. But we do this all the time. We do it all the time in normal things, but we don't think about it that way. It's just like if you're driving a car, you can drive a car safely if it's 80 degrees out and the pavement is dry. Let there be some rain, and how well you drive the car, how many accidents occur is different. And then if you drive the car in Chicago in the middle of a snowstorm, it's even different. But a half an inch of snow in Atlanta, and you'll have all kind of accidents all over the road. So we have to be reasonable and rational as we think about how to approach this virus. Vaccines have worked. This is the best protection we have. It's not foolproof. We have people with breakthrough infections, and we have people, unfortunately, with breakthrough infections that die, even though they're fully vaccinated. So it's not like it's 100% all or nothing. The critical thing is that you should do what you can to be the most protected that you can be, and not be fooled by some new information. I remember when seatbelts were first mandated, people said, "Oh no, seatbelts will kill you. You'll get in the car and you can't get out." We have to use common sense. The vast majority of people who get in a car collision are safer if they have their seatbelt on. The vast majority of people on the earth, no matter what the situation is, are going to be better off. They're going to stand a better chance of living if they have been vaccinated and have the appropriate boosters.
So we just had a question. Why are students required to get the vaccine if it's not going to stop the spread?
It's not. That's the wrong word to ask. We're not trying to stop the spread.
Wait. No, this is the right question. If it's not going to stop the spread, why is it required?
It will still reduce. It will reduce the spread.
I know I got a pro-vaccination committee right here, but let me just get out the last part. If it's not going to stop the spread, the requirement, which is a personal choice, can stop you from being educated. Never in American history that I could think of after the civil rights. So let me just start with 1971. Yeah, I was born, because racism stopped a lot of stuff. But in terms of a viral disease, I've never heard anything like COVID being able to stop somebody from getting educated. So, why is it required? As a student, again, if I'm not stopping the spread, you're requiring me just to do something to protect myself, which is a personal choice.
It does help protect other people. It reduces how fast it spreads, and also, which is important, reducing how fast it spreads.
Reducing and stopping is two different things. If I get hit,
but we're trying to reduce. This is a pandemic, and we're trying to slow down and stop the pandemic. There are people in this country, unfortunately, that have been in a car accident or had a heart attack and have been dead because the hospital's full of people with COVID. Okay, so that there are a number of different ways that this pandemic hurts people. So I want to be clear. In terms of how sick you become and how easy it is for you to spread it to other people, being vaccinated and boosted reduces the bad effects of that. And it also helps save the medical care system, which is being overwhelmed in many parts of the country. So that's the reason.
Let me ask again. Alma, Elise, Doc Murray. We're not talking about a car accident. We're talking about my ability to take history 101. And if half my classes are online, or a majority of my classes are online, why is it required that students get the booster shots in order to be enrolled in the university? So that's a little different. Like, I understand the scientific, about the spread and everything, but the mandate when we're not having in-person classes for each booster, it seems like it's infringing on people's personal right and personal choice of how they want to treat their body.
Well, I know at UIC, in many places, the UIC regulations are written. If you come to class in person, you have to be vaccinated and boosted. There are people, sometimes for medical reasons, religious reasons, other reasons, who are not vaccinated. They just can't come on campus. So there's a distinction there. They can take online courses and stuff. So I want to be clear about that. But I like what Elise said earlier. We're talking about protecting the health of the group, and so that's the important issue, and that's why mandates exist.
So Anna and Elise, let me ask you all this. In terms of what you're paying, whether you're paying, taking out loans, do you feel as though you're getting the full educational experience, and should your tuition be reduced because you're not getting the full experience? How do you all feel about that?
So I took out private and public loans. So I think I can speak on this. I don't think I'm getting the right educational experience at all. Like, even though I prefer online, tuition's still pretty high. Like, we're still paying for in-person classes. Why am I paying for facilities I'm not even using? Which is a huge problem, because a lot of people pay out of pocket for university or college, not getting that in-person education, or not getting those facilities to use. It's stupid.
And Elise, what about you in terms of law school, which we know is very expensive? Do you feel as though you should get some discount for not having the full experience?
I mean, yeah, I think so. I was lucky enough to receive a pretty large scholarship, so I haven't been hit financially as hard as maybe some of my peers. But I definitely do think that if, classes required to be online and there's no option to be in person, they should definitely reduce the costs in which going to the school. Because just as Anna said, we're being charged for things that we don't even get the option to use. So at that point, the institutions are just taking money for fun, and we're supposed to be here to get our education. So if we can't, use the gyms or use cafeterias or whatever else that they might charge us for, if we can't actively choose to use those things, there's no reason to pay for them within our tuition. We should only pay for the education itself and whatever specific materials, I guess, we need for that specific education, and nothing else, in my opinion.
Are students at UIC allowed to use the cafeteria? Are the dorms still open? Or
the dorms are still open. I don't know if you can live there if you're not vaccinated. That I don't know.
Yeah, I understand you probably can't live there, but do they still have cafeteria hours and food
Yeah.
for students? Because you were talking about the food pantry.
No, the food pantry exists because people can't afford to buy food, but all of the food services are open, at least on the East Campus, on the main campus, and students don't. Again, at University of Illinois, you're supposed to mask, which it seems to me everybody does when they're on campus. They wear a mask, but in the areas where food is served, people take their masks off to have coffee and eat. So that still is going on.
Well, I'm gonna tell you all this, and it might be a little touchy for everybody out here. But the other day, I was with some of my buddies, and we were talking about the young people in school. And it's not specifically towards you all as future professors. We were really talking about people like doctors in terms of medical doctors. We were a little weary about how these young people are learning because we grew up a certain way. We might be stubborn. We're used to being in class, but we don't have as much faith in the medical profession, just to give an example, of the upcoming students because we don't feel like they have a real learning experience. Like when you all talk about your test to take home, and you all's profession is totally different. And we were talking about chemistry, like chemists and pharmacists. We feel as though like these medical doctors in certain professions need more hands-on experience. Even when you talk about some of your trades, and we don't have a person in trades, but even with construction, plumbing, with everybody learning online and remote, some of these hands-on type of profession, are these individuals really going to be capable of doing their job? Of course, experience will help down the line, but how do you all feel about that?
I can speak to this because my brother's actually in medical school right now. I think I also, I would joke around with him as well, with that sentiment of like, do you feel like you guys are, learning because y'all have to be the doctors eventually, and um but I think the medical schools, at least from what I've been able to garner, are, they're taking everything as seriously as possible because clearly they know that these are the future medical professionals. And as far as I know, or at least with my brother's school, they still have like their practical learning. All that is still in person. They just do it in smaller, more controlled groups, I believe. So the things that you need to do hands-on, they're not doing like some weird online simulation. They're in there with the cadavers. They're in there with um patients and like running through the things that they have to do, and they still have to go and do their I don't know what they call it, but they work with real people. So they're still doing what is absolutely necessary to make sure they have those experiences to, in the future actually be a well-rounded doctor. So though it is like, I understand where the thought comes from because I was thinking it too, but I think majority of medical schools are still doing everything that needs to be shown in person. I think they're still doing them in person. So yeah.
What medical school is your brother at?
He's in Wisconsin, and the school, I always mess up the name, but I think it's the Medical College of Wisconsin. I think that is what it is called.
That's a good thing. It's rare we have black men in medical school, so let them know
Yeah,
we're
I
proud
I
of
come
them.
from a family of medical professionals. Like my dad and all of his brothers are all doctors and things like that. So it's pretty much ingrained into my family. I am the outlier in my
Oh,
family.
so your people from Chicago? Just curious. It's rare I hear this about black men.
My parents are from Ghana, in West Africa. So
Okay.
they immigrated to the United States way long ago. And yeah, my dad is a doctor. My mom's a nurse. Um, my brother, he was interested in medicine, so he went that route. My sister, I think she's interested in medicine as well, but I don't know if she's going to do med school. And then there's me, who's more legal focused. And then I also do a lot with art and like social media and things like that too.
Dr. Murray, you all were gonna say something. I'm
Well,
sorry.
I was going to say, so I think she's right about most medical schools. So, but again, I want to make I think people have to be thoughtful about what's going on. So there are some things in medical school or carpentry or whatever that don't require hands-on. So, I mean, if you're in a class of 200 medical students and you have a biochemistry lecture, that clearly could be online if you want it to be, and often is. But certainly when the pandemic first started, for example, most medical schools suspended classes, not primarily because it wasn't critical to have hands-on training, but because there literally wasn't enough personal protective equipment, masks, etc., to accommodate the medical students. There wasn't really enough to even accommodate the rest of the healthcare staff. So a lot of these things are balanced. But now that the supply chain is a little easier to deal with, most schools, certainly for the critical clerkships, that's what we call them, where you're actually working with real people and real patients. Those are going on in person. As much of it, when there's an upsurge, as much of it that can be done online is done, but that's mostly lectures and didactic materials. So I think with everything, I don't think there's any one right way to teach or learn. Everybody has a way they prefer. Some people are auditory learners, some people are visual learners. What we have to do is make sure we have enough options so that students are able to learn in the best way for whatever the subject matter is they're trying to learn.
So Alma, are you having study groups? Like, do people reach out and say, "Hey, let's have a study group"? And is it all via Zoom, or do sometimes students actually get together in person? And what is that experience like?
Well, a lot of people create group meets for class, and we'll have Zoom meetings sometimes. But so far this semester and last semester, there weren't any in-person study groups, at least for me, um, especially with the subjects I'm taking.
Elise, what about you? Because we know in law school students get together a lot. Is this via Zoom, or you all meeting in person?
Yeah, we study groups are a thing, and last semester we mostly met in person. This semester right now we're meeting in through Zoom just because not a lot of people are on campus, but we still have the option to, like, go to each other's apartments if people feel comfortable to do so. I know a lot of, like, my friends just decide to get tested if they want to do a study group in person, just to be, like, as sure as possible. But yeah, it's both Zoom and in person, but they still go on.
Doc Murray, we're running out of time, and I want you to just tell us some of the horror stories that you've heard from some of your students. Now, I won't say horror stories. Some of the complaints that you heard, without naming names, about dealing with the stress, like whether it's the depression that COVID is bringing on, the ability to take tests. And please, you two chime in if you heard something from some of your peers. Like what, and how can we help these students?
Well, I think one of the critical things to remember is where our students start off from. So if you're in a position like I was, where you had to work and go to school at the same time, that clearly puts a different level of stress on you, which is why tuition ought to be free, by the way. That's a different story. There are many of my students, these are the undergraduate college students. If all of a sudden in a household, parents have to go to work, younger kids are not in K through 12 schools because the schools were closed last year. That meant that many of my students had to be home to help watch their younger siblings or nieces and nephews while they're still trying to go to school themselves remotely. The ability to, as I mentioned, one of my students, like I said, that was doing all of her assignments and handing in her schoolwork and writing her papers on her phone because she really didn't have a laptop. And even though the school had a situation where you could borrow a laptop, you could only borrow it for a day and then you had to turn it back in, which was not a good situation. So those kinds of problems, not having access to textbooks, these are problems that existed pre-pandemic, but during a pandemic, it's harder to deal with it. So if we were on campus together and I couldn't afford some textbook, but I had a couple of friends who had the textbook, maybe I could borrow it for a couple of hours during the day. this becomes more difficult during the pandemic. The ability to pay rent. If you're living in a household, even if you're living at home with where your parents are, if the family can't pay rent, that's a problem, and the stress about fear about getting evicted. A lot of problems that I have with my students is that a lot of these emergency measures that were put in place, increasing unemployment, compensation, and that kind of stuff, they were only there for people that the white man considers here with papers. So what did that mean? That meant that our families that were immigrants, if they were here without documents, or what we call hybrid families, where some family members are here without the color of law and others are citizens, that creates another kind of tension and problem. So these resources didn't flow to all those communities correctly. So we know what happened. We know that in Black communities where the pandemic had a major impact, people were unemployed, or they were working poor jobs, or they were working 2 or 3 or 4 jobs trying to pay rent. In our immigrant communities of all colors, there was extra stress. So the people who are the most vulnerable, that don't get the support that they deserve, and they get messed with all the time, when you have a crisis like this, there's just more burdens on those communities and those families.
Alma, did you want to add anything? I see you shaking your head.
No, I just fully agree with her, all of her points, especially for those who are from immigrant communities and have like large families. It's a lot to support, especially like newly immigrated families. I knew a lot of people who immigrated here still, like, on green cards and stuff, just struggling to make ends meet, because for some, like you said, they don't have proper documents, so sometimes work's hard to find. And I've known people who've gotten evicted because of like COVID. It's a very hard situation.
So as we get ready to wind it up, I want to specifically ask you two, Alma and Elise. You two have graduated, moved on to another level of education in your career. What advice would you give some of people younger than you, some younger students, whether it's high school or undergrad, about motivation and trying to stay focused during this pandemic? Because you all have done it. You all have graduated and then matriculated to the next level of your education. So what are some advice that you could give young people or your peers?
I think advice I could give is understanding that, like, it is hard. There is no like easy way for it to be done, especially because it's just a completely different situation that you've been preparing for things to be a certain way in life, and all of a sudden things are very different. So it's an adjusting period, it's an adjusting type of thing. But in that, I think as long as you still know why you want to do something, or the interest for you to do something is still there, it becomes a little easier to just do the things that you have to do to get to where you want to be. And sometimes it helps to just focus on the thing in the moment and not think too hard about the next day and the next day and the next day. Because if you focus too much on what's to come, you kind of let everything that's in front of you right now kind of fall to the wayside. So I think trying to just take it day by day and not, worry too much about how things will turn out. And things usually they end up falling into place as long as you put the effort into it.
Alma, would you like to add anything?
You took the words right out of my mouth. Like, find your passion, take it day by day, and also balance things out. Like, these are the last 4 years you're gonna get before real life starts, where you have to do a 9 to 5, pay taxes, and worry about your credit score. So take time out and get to know people around you, party, be balanced, don't party all the time, but take time out, like, develop your character, adventure, take risks, good risks, not stuff that's gonna damage you or your reputation.
Doc Murray, you got any advice for young people? I know you love school, so I would love to hear this.
It's not that I love school. I think that you should be clear that no matter
learning.
Exactly, that you're going to be in the process of learning your whole life, whether you're formally in school and paying tuition and getting grades, or whether you're working on a job or trying to build a business or whatever. And so in order to really learn, it means being able to listen to people, to be flexible, and to stay focused as much as you can. So that's my encouragement. And remember that the problems that we feel today because of the pandemic are only going to be solved if we collectively, if we together as a group, come together and put in place what we need to help each other survive and to bring this pandemic to a close.
Well, I'm gonna tell you. First, let me say, sometimes I'm shocked that we're related, that you like learning so much. Cause sometimes I need a break. Shit. But for real, Alma and Elise, like for real, I'm proud of both of you because, and I'm being honest, see, I had problems going to high school when it was cold outside in Chicago, let alone, having to take some shot, some booster shot, and then having to be online. I don't know if I would do it, just to be honest. My stubbornness, I'd probably just say the hell with it. So I commend you all, and I'm proud of you for real. And all the students out there, regardless of their age, because I know some women in law school at the age of, I shouldn't say that age, but they're over 50. So I'm really happy. And, I am worried about the younger generation again, but it's mostly from the social aspect and then all the inequalities that are going to be exposed more, especially with little Black boys. I'm really worried about them because this pandemic and this learning affects us differently. Often they assume young Black boys have learning disabilities and things of that nature. When we're just happy young men, and we just we like to play it. We have that excitement, and now we're not doing that. We're at home, so that social interaction is really, really bothering me. And it'll be interesting to see in a couple of years how it pans out. Because if young Black boys don't get to express themselves or get the right amount of energy, sometimes they could be led down the wrong path. And I'm just worried about that. But we always end our show and we let our guests say anything they want, talk about anything they want for 30 seconds to a minute. And we'll start off with you, Elise, to close us out.
Yeah, I guess thank you guys for having me on this podcast. It's been fun. I hope everyone is just able to stay safe and have fun and live their best lives and do the things that they want. And I hope that sometime soon in the near future, things can get as back to normal as we remember them. I am hopeful. But yeah, thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Alma?
Just like Elise, thank y'all so much for having me on here. One thing I can just emphasize on is just staying safe, be careful, socialize, and take care of your mental health and physical health.
Doc Murray?
Well, I have great faith in young people. And just remember, the world is messed up now. Stay focused, because together you all can change it and build a better world than we have today. So hang in there.
So I would like to end this show today by saying the Chicago Bears are fired Pace and Nagy. I'm so excited. I can't wait till next year. And I also want to say, too, we should have had him on today. We're going to have to get him on one time. Our young brother, Intellectual Dre, is also a student, went through school, and he'll be entering, I don't know which law school, but he'll be attending law school in the fall. So he's dealing with this as well. We should have him on. But come check us out next month. We'll have Dr. Murray on with Dr. Kamara Jones talking about racism and how it affects us. It'll be a 90-minute special. We look forward to it. And once again, none of this could be done without our super producer, Intellectual Dre. So again, see y'all next month. And thanks, Dre.
you.